Welcome to episode 69 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I speak with Mike Stahl, the principal architect on PowerFX at Microsoft, about the extremely experimental Git integration that allows multiple users to be able to edit at the same time in the Canvas app, which is something everybody has been wanting, as well as to allow the traceability in Git, which is something the hardcore devs have been used to. So sit back and relax, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and my co-host, Scott. I have all the power to row. Scott, how's it going?
That's very good, Daryl. I got to press the big red record button. You're really giving me the responsibility this time. I feel like I graduated from some sort of, preliminary internship,
We are having some slight video problems with our podcasting software, and we're seeing if Scott works any better. So far, it works a little bit better. It's not like what it used to be. At the end of the year, something changed. So anyway, Scott, now that you have all the power, maybe you want to introduce the guest.
Well, yes, absolutely. Goodness me, this is really putting me. I feel like I've progressed even further now. Next level. This is level up. Achievement unlocked. Yeah. Mike, hello, Mike Stahl. Thanks ever so much for joining us. Mike actually his job title at Microsoft is the PowerFX Architect. PowerFX Architect. That's right, Mark. Right? That's right, Mike, isn't it? It's you're kind of the architect in the PowerFX team, but of course PowerFX is so broad. Maybe you could just kind of give us a bit of an overview of what you do in the PowerFX architect department.
Yeah. First, it's great to be here with you guys again. Thanks for having me back on the show. So really, I work in Power Platform, our low-code platform, and PowerFX is the low-code part of low-code platform. So we started in Canvas Apps and the little expressions, it's that Excel-like language in Canvas Apps, and have been expanding it to other parts of the platform, bringing that low-code goodness more broadly. So we have gone into Dataverse for being able to create calculated columns, commanding. We also took it all open source, and so we're open source on GitHub now with the engine. So a lot of exciting things happening there, just bringing that low-code goodness as broadly as we can.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the PowerFX is one of those things that sort of snuck up on us all, really. We've all been using the kind of the low-code expression language, like you say, for a while in Canvas Apps, and then suddenly it just blew up into this thing that's like platform-wide, and suddenly it's turning up in all these different places. I have to ask, right? Was there always a master plan behind this? When there was like the kind of Canvas Apps expressions being first kind of created, were you kind of in the secret sort of little rooms going, we've got this plan to take over the whole Power Platform?
I personally was not. I'm actually pretty late to the game. But I'm sure some folks from day one had this in their mind all along, and we still have quite a ways to go. The bottom line is that we have a lot of ways to customize things with designers and what we call no code, and on the other end of the spectrum with full code, Visual Studio and VS Code and professionals. But there's always this need for this low code in the middle, the best of both worlds. And so what ultimately is driving something like PowerFX is just the need across the platform and across products to have an easy way to go customize it.
Okay. So the easy way is more of easy for entry rather than maybe ease of the normal of a standard .NET developer, right? That's what you mean by ease, right? Easy way.
Yeah. And it's really what the Power Platform has been all about, is making it very feasible for makers and smart people in their domain to be able to go solve some problem that they care about. And there's been some great stories here. Like one of my favorite is about a trucking bottling company that had to figure out where to park their semis, and semis are large vehicles, and apparently this was actually causing a lot of grief about where do you put all these large trucks and how do you fit them. And one of the guys there just went and wrote a Power App and made their lives a lot better. No IT department would have done that. It was too niche, but it helped them. And if you went to him and said, wow, you just wrote this application, you're a developer, he'd look at you like you're crazy. I'm not a developer. I'm a parking person. It's really, ultimately, I see this evolution. Like, you've got calculators that it is empowering them, and then Excel is kind of that next big step. And lots of people use Excel, but they wouldn't say that to their accountants. And Power Platform is really just continuing that curve of just empowering lots of people to go solve their problems.
That's so funny, because today I had a call from my father-in-law, and he was on some meeting, and he was having to convert for coordinates in hours, minutes, and degrees. He wanted it in a decimal value. And he's like, yeah, someone showed me a Python script or something. Do you think I could use that? And I'm like, well, okay, you're just taking the hours and you're adding it to the minutes divided by 60. And you're adding it to the seconds divided by 3,600. And it's already an Excel sheet. He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, this is super easy. So I literally told him the character, okay, equals this column plus this column divided by 60 plus this column divided by 3,600. Done. And then I was like, just drag that and autofill of everything and you're done. He did it. And he's like, whoa. I'm like, congratulations. Now you're a genius. And it's funny how people that don't know how to use these tools look at people that do and like, oh, you are so amazing at this. But when they actually spent a little bit of time to see what it took to do it, they're like, oh, I could do that. Like that's kind of the way that it is. You know what I mean? It's kind of the Wizard of Oz curtain.
Yes, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yes.
So yeah, Mike is the man behind the curtain. Is that right? I'm not sure.
One of many.
One of many. So this episode we asked you on because we particularly noticed that a lot of attention around the management of Canvas apps specifically as code, more of in a sort of GitHub repo. Now, Daryl, I mean, you have done a session for quite some time now, actually, on managing complex Canvas apps as code, right? That's a session you've done. Yes. Do you want to kind of just do a quick summary for Mike's benefit? Just on.
So the first 25 minutes of it is the Canvas App Packager, which Mike actually submitted some pull requests for back in the day. And then Microsoft made a much, much better version of it and is continuing to improve that version of it. So that he knows full well about. And then the rest of it is walking through, well, how do you deal with, how do you divide up your code into functions, basically? How do you use buttons as functions? How do you creating a hidden page that's only for admins that you could then use to trigger things or convert things or that kind of stuff, and show all of these hidden programming buttons that are actually functions? And how do you deal with concurrency issues with these things? How do you deal with race condition issues with all this kind of stuff? So it's me taking all of my years of being Cody person and trying to make it work in this low code world, and this is the best I came up with, and it works fairly good, but it's not necessarily self-evident this is the best route to go down. So that's that presentation, I guess. So is that good enough there, Scott? Or I need to fill in some more?
Yeah, I know. It's an awesome presentation. So it kind of feels as though, Daryl, you kind of like, it's like this is like a handover now. It's like you started, you've got the baton, Daryl, starting with that, and then so maybe Mike, you can kind of say, well, how does this new? I think in your blog post, did you describe it as extremely experimental or something like that? Or
yeah. So there's a few parts here. About a year ago, we released the tool that Daryl's talking about, and it's also open source. And the gist there was, prior to that, you could save a Canvas app, but it would save it as an MS app file and essentially as a binary. It's like this opaque binary. And whether you exported a solution through ALM or just exported it directly from Studio, you'd get this MS app file. And you can't do a lot with binaries, right? You can't, sure, you can put them into GitHub, but you can't audit them. All the goodness that you expect, you can't do pull requests against them. It's very limited. And so, about a year ago, we started this, hey, let's have a better format than just a binary. And so the first thing there was just to get access to the formulas, because we talk about it being a low-code platform, but the joke is, I mean, some of these formulas are 1,000 lines. I mean, they do get very large. And so if you're creating your app and it's visual layout and things like that, of course you want to do that in Studio. But if you do have a large formula, there's actually a lot of cases where VS Code is a better window into your app to see the formulas, do various things, etc., search globally, stuff like that. And so, it started with, well, let's make it easy to view the formulas in VS Code. And that quickly becomes, well, what about everything else in the app? And golly, we'd like to be able to check it into Git, because just for management and all the goodness that Git has. And it turns out that there's a long list of reasons why that breaks. So, for example, if you just look at the MS app directly, you could unzip it and you could kind of look into it, but we basically rewrite the whole zip randomly each time. So the file names in the zip file will change from save to save, things like that. And so, you could put it into Git, but every single save, your whole app would be rewritten, and it would be it's like cheating. You wouldn't actually get any of the benefits you expect from Git. When people are using Git, they're expecting minimal diffs. If I just change one line here, my Git diff should be very small and reflect that. I should be able to do auditing. I should be able to see who changed what. I should be able to do pull requests and merge things together. Like, there's all these things that are pretty solved problems in the software industry, the source control, and we wanted to bring all of that goodness to Canvas apps. So we started off command line and trying to get this format right and trying to deal with all these sort of weird things that we may have been doing. And there's a lot of design on that. And sort of halfway through that process, it was like, command line's great, but what's even better? Direct integration with Studio. And what we actually had were two problems. That on one hand, we had a whole train running on collaboration. So, today with the Canvas app, only one person can edit it at a time. So when the second person goes to edit it, you get a little dialogue saying, sorry, go away. That's no fun. So collaboration is important. So we have one huge train on collaboration, and you've seen some of these collaborative features coming onto the platform, like commenting and things like that. So we wanted this collaborative co-auth train. We also wanted this fusion train where pro devs and makers could work together in harmony and happiness. And so we had these two different trains, and we realized, what? We could solve both of these in kind of a glorious unified way, where if we used Git as the collaboration plane, that would solve the second problem, giving the pro devs and the makers a way to collaborate. And then if we tied it into Studio so that a maker could still do the collaboration without having to go to Git, etc., that solves the collaboration problem. And so we did end up, having this idea of, hey, we could solve collaboration and fusion together in kind of one solution. And so that's where we're at with the Git. It's still extremely experimental. Like, we do have, a lot of things to work out, and it's pretty bold, and we want to make sure that it lands right and in a way that people can really rely on in a production capacity. But so far, I'm really encouraged to see the community response, and we're really optimistic about the direction it can go in.
Okay. So when you say Studio, is that the Canvas App Studio design experience? Is that Visual Studio? What's Studio?
Yeah, pardon me. By that I mean the Canvas App Designer. So when you go to create.powerapps.com.
Okay. All right. And so then in there, you're able to see the actual code that you're generating, basically?
Well, what you can do is, so in this feature, your app can be tied to Git. Like, you can set up an association saying that, okay, this app is actually, you can point it to a repo. Then you continue to work in Studio just like normal. And other people then that come to the app and edit it, we actually allow them to come in and edit it. Like, we see that, oh, this app is backed by Git. Okay, we will allow multiple editors. And these editors just stay in Studio. They don't even care that there's Git under the hood. And so it's friendly and approachable to them. They're not hit with a whole bunch of pro dev source control concepts right up the bat. They're just able to do their thing. And we wanted an experience very similar to what Office Word and Excel have. You can have multiple people inside of an Excel document or PowerPoint or Word. And we wanted an experience similar to that. So the makers are still in Studio doing their thing, but it just so happens that every time you save, under the hood, we're running it through this conversion and doing a git commit. So we git commit, we git push. And so what it means is that you can open up Studio in one browser, Git in another browser, and side by side, make changes in Studio, draw your buttons, change your formulas, and then go over to Git and see what you just changed. And you can then change something in Git and then go over to Studio, hit the refresh button, and see it going the other way, and that they can be merged. Because as soon as you talk to Git, the most immediate next question is, well, what about merges? Right? So that's really at the heart of a lot of this, is the ability to actually merge changes. And so as soon as you toss that in, now you have a collaboration story. And so we could have multiple people going to Studio, making their changes, doing their saves, and it's all pushing to Git. And under the hood, we're running the merges as well. And so they're all, effectively, the makers are all collaborating now. So it becomes a collaboration story.
Is there, how often do you have a leaky abstraction where you have a merge conflict and two people that don't know what Git is? How does that get presented to them? How do you get off that cliff? Or how do you solve that issue?
Yeah, and the way we look at this, like this problem exists in PowerPoint as well. Like you could, and other systems, so you could have makers go do some really maniacal edits simultaneously, toss in a few network outages as well just to get your timing right, that result in some sort of conflict that can't be resolved automatically. And so this is part, like our basic approach here is that one of the benefits with Git is that you always do have a way to deal with it. So like let's say we got the merge wrong. I edited something, you deleted something, it merged not quite the way you wanted. One of the benefits here is somebody always could go to Git to sort out what happened and to, quote, fix it. So there is always that rock solid foundation. And then, part of this is presenting it to the UI and saying, in these cases that, okay, we can't merge this. And then that becomes a very similar problem to what you have in PowerPoint today. And part of our goal is to shrink that. There's a lot of things we could potentially do. We could have visual differs and things like that. So we'll sort of work through what the right balance is. But the essential thing is that there is a rock solid foundation on Git. So even if we say things like, we just can't fix this. If we do it in layers, well, at least we can send people to Git to resolve it and then come back. And then we'll continually shrink that window over time with better integration, better visual diffs. Like that, we can always keep improving.
Well, that's what I love about using Git as that back end, because like you say, there's that rock solid history of developers have got ways and techniques of solving these challenges, like with visual diffs and pull requests and merge conflict resolution, all those kind of things. But so say I love the maniacal edits. So say Daryl was editing a Canvas app and I was editing a Canvas app and I decided to do a maniacal edit. Like, I don't know, maybe I just decided that I wanted to kind of go and rename a collection randomly that was created in the app, some sort of like initialization screen that was a cached data that was used everywhere else. And Daryl was going and editing expressions that used that collection. When I click the sync button, it would obviously commit my change and it would change all of those expressions. Because like if I change a collection, that one of the really cool things about Canvas apps is if you change the collection name, it's going to tell you all the different places that, if that expression uses it and you have to go and resolve it. Or if I rename a button, for example, it'll even automatically rename all of those buttons wherever they're used. When Daryl clicks sync, what would he see after that crazy maniacal edit that I've done? What would be his experience there?
And there's two answers to that. There's where it is that are experimental, like in the product right now, if we went and looked at it, where we're at, and it's where we want it to be. And so where we're at is, merge is pretty opinionated, and we would go merge it the best that we could. And kind of our goal, our North Star there is if it was a real-time collaboration without Git in the picture, what would the experience be? So if you went and you did a big rename and, Daryl was editing something, if we can intrinsically merge it, like if there's no intrinsic conflict, we should be able to merge it and it should be seamless. If let's say you're both editing something that intrinsically conflicts, like there's no way for us to be opinionated about it, then, ultimately we need to be surfacing some sort of notification. And, for starters, we can at least warn and say this has happened and that we've picked something and go to Git to resolve it. And then we can continually make that more visually useful as we continue to grow the feature. So, we can do visual diffs and things like that. And the thing that was really critical to the design here is making sure that we did have an option. Like, what we wanted to make sure of is that even if we have, for the craziest scenarios that people can come up with, that there is a path to deal with it. Like the foundation is solid. We can build the features that we need and that we're not boxed into some corner. And then the rate that we do these things will really just be dependent on, priorities, community feedback, things like that. So far, our observation has been that our automatic policy handles things like 95% of the time. So for the vast majority of cases, it actually an opinionated merge works just fine. And then, we'll see. And it's a significant improvement over where you are today. So like if you look today, you can't do any collaboration at all. And so to be able to take somebody from 0 to 95%, that's
huge.
Great.
Yeah, totally.
We want to be at 100%.
It's like an exclusive lock that you've got to take out at the moment. It's like, I'm editing it and no one else can edit it. But in that scenario, with Daryl presumably would see that opinionated merge that happens. Daryl would see the expressions that he's edited overwritten by my expression. Is that what he would see?
What we would like to do is, once you have Git and you have all this history, you can do all these integrated features, like hover over an expression and see who edited it last. So you go look at a label and it's like, that's not quite right. And actually, in Studio, we can go to Git and we could see that, here's the history. And, Daryl edited this last Tuesday. It's like, that's weird. Well, what else did he do while he was breaking this label? And you can go see the other things that he touched. And this is where source control becomes great, because you can go and do things like say, that whole change was just wrong, and you can just remove a whole change. Now, again, at this point, all of the source control goodness is on the Git side of the fence. So they would go to Git, and in Git they would, remove, revert Daryl's changes and things like that. There's certainly an open question of, well, how much of that ability do we surface directly in Studio? Because the concepts are all useful, like the idea of auditing, the idea of seeing who touched this last, merging, reverting. These are all generally useful problems, and Git is a solution to them, and a robust solution. But I would expect that over time, that makers will want more and more of that, kind of similar to like Word's track changes feature. Like that's a form of versioning. People can see the different changes and it's presented to them in a friendly, approachable way. We may go after something like that.
This is this is amazing to think of where you guys started with, and where I guess the Canvas app packager started. So the way that I did it was there was noisy diffs everywhere. I had no control of how I was creating it, and I said I need to see this, and so I took everything I didn't care about and put it in something I didn't see, and so that changes all the time. It's muck. I can't do anything with, but I can pull out just the part that I care about. And they go from that, and it's like, all right, we can change this. We can make this better for ourselves. And the next step is this. The next step is that. There is this no high level sort of, of course, we're going to do this because then we can get this, and this. But once you get started on this journey, it becomes very, just a little tweak here. Now we can have Git integration. With a little tweak here. Now we can actually do this multi-user support. So that's that's pretty cool to see the journey coming to fruition so far, and where it can come in the near future, hopefully as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love because Git calls it blame, right? Which I always think blame is like it's a bit of a negative. I always feel like slightly uncomfortable kind of with blame.
Naming is hard. What are you going to call it, Scott? What would you call it, Scott?
I don't know. Like, yeah, I think audit is a good, history provision. So, but blame just seems like, aha, well, it was Scott that did the maniacal edit, and we're going to put his name up in lights. Well, I'll just hang my head in shame or something like that.
In my head, I was thinking of Last Touched By, but that didn't sound
right. Well, no, indeed, yes, yeah, it's yeah, like you say, Daryl, naming stuff is hard, and I suppose sometimes people, especially if it's the maker experience, they don't want to necessarily be to have all of that Git terminology that would become it's just a new thing for them, but. So this is Canvas. This is purely Canvas apps at the moment. Do you have any plans to sort of move it into sort of more into the model-driven side of things, even just like custom pages or model-driven apps, or even just at the solution level or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm definitely custom pages. We absolutely that's super important. We would love to see this. It's experimental, so we got to see how this all plays out. There's a lot of open questions. There's still some skepticism about can this really work? Can a maker's activity really be backed by Git? Like that really is a skeptical question, and we're not sure. Like, we hope. We're optimistic about it, but it's actually, come back in 5 years from now, that will be an obvious question. But where we are today, that's actually not an obvious question, and that's something that we're trying to figure out. Certainly, if it can, and if we can prove that, this approach is good and it works, yeah, we would love to see it extended elsewhere. I mean, even look at other products. Take Excel today. You can't check an Excel into Git. Like that. It's a pattern that we would love to see across the platform and in other products as well, if it bears out. And that is kind of that big question hanging over our head. Is it's looking optimistic, but boy, this is tricky. This has never really been done like this, and so we are kind of all at the edge of our seats, seeing, okay, can we really make it work?
What's the part that is scary about the part that says we don't know if we can do that? Is it there's managing massive conflicting changes at once? Is it mapping? Like what's the part of, man, this is the tricky part?
Yeah, so a few layers. One is Git is this super powerful. You sort of need a 300 IQ to be able to use it, and like you could have 20 minutes of Git jokes here.
Yes.
So can we take something that's that powerful and that's, with that much complexity and ability, etc., and can we, create a veneer where a maker who does not want to worry about any of that, makers are smart, good people, but they do not want to deal about the difference between fetch and pull and the Git graph and all of that craziness. So can we bridge that? Something as powerful as Git, something as easy as Maker, and bridge it, that's tricky. So that's one part of it. The other part is, can we really represent something as complicated as a Canvas app in a Git meaningful way? And so formulas are one thing, but there's a lot of stuff in a Canvas app. There's connections, there's, galleries and lots of controls and AI and PCF. And so there's a lot of different pieces there. Can we really get all of that in a really meaningful sort of, really get rid of the noisy diffs, really get rid of, right now we take all of the noisy diffs and we put them in a single entropy file. We try to corral them into one spot, and we say, okay,
that's what I was doing. You guys got to get any better.
And so like, can we really get rid of them? But like really bridging between, like Git has been targeted for textual formats, and Canvas apps are text targeted at a UI dragging things around. Like we all know how horrible HTML is to merge and Git. Canvas apps sort of like 10 times worse. It's even more UI and things. So there is, still, can we really get rid of the noisy diffs and really make it seamless and work there? That's another part. I think we can. I think it's, we're proving that it's possible. But
it seems to be working.
There's still some skepticism.
It does. I mean, having played with it, and certainly with having much more experience with the SOPA solution packager version of it, rather than just the Git sync, it doesn't tend to be that noisy. I mean, the actual output is fairly clean, especially the YAML output is nice and clean, and you can see if you add something in a kind of a fairly late change was the whole sequencing of things, so that things didn't move around. They were consistently output in the order in which they appear in the studio, and that made a huge difference because usually that stuff doesn't change. And the YAML was a bit controversial, and there was a whole set. I remember there being a whole discussion in GitHub around YAML. I think YAML stands for yelling at my. Is it YAML? Yelling at my laptop. I think that's what it stands for, right? I mean, certainly from a solution unpack and pack, it's fairly quiet. Talk about noisiness.
Yeah. So it's funny. It turns out the problem's not the YAML; it's everything else. So the formulas are easy. It's everything else in a Canvas app. Like you have connections, you have table descriptions, you have AI models, you have PCF controls, you have some very advanced controls, galleries, cards. And so definitely starting this was easy. We started with formulas. It's like, hey, okay, not so bad. And then just the tidal wave of all these other things. Like these are, we try to make it look easy, but there's a lot that goes on. And that's where the biggest challenge is here. So it's funny, we call it the YAML format, but if you actually look at it, there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there that's not YAML, but it sort of has stuck, is how we refer to it.
I mean, are those other things sort of necessary from a maker and a diff perspective, though? Because you've got PCF components, they've got a load of JavaScript in there. You wouldn't want to diff that. From a control, you've got a load of HTML stuff. Like you wouldn't necessarily, you want to know what version you've got, right? In terms of, okay, well, I've upgraded the version from control 1.0 to 1.1, but you don't necessarily need to worry about the diffs.
Right, not the diffs of the content, but there's just a lot of, like, for example, the Canvas app will capture the schema. So the schema, the swagger, things like that are actually part of the Canvas app. When you talk to a Dataverse table, like sort of the shape of the table is part of it. So there are just a lot of little things. Now, like a PCF control, the actual TypeScript of the control is not in the Canvas app, but kind of the contract between them and the boundary and how we refer to it. All these manifest files, things like that. Basically, there's just a lot under the hood beyond the formulas, and we need to make sure that those things, that the whole app works.
So I would think the next logical step, or another logical step, whether it's the very next one to take or not, would be to utilize this for an offline experience. As long as you have some sort of data cache of, hey, here's so I can create these collections, and that way when they're querying I have it, then great. They can play all they want to, and then when they come online, you just merge it in like you normally do, right?
Absolutely. That's a great example of the kind of thing what we want out of the Fusion side. So if somebody's doing an edit that is primarily UI and laying out controls, of course that should be in Studio. But if they're doing an edit that's primarily, say, updating a 1,000-line formula, they may want to do that in VS Code, and they may even want to do that offline. It's just part of the natural expectation of a Fusion play. Like professional developers have all these patterns. Like they expect to be able to use Git, they expect to use VS Code, they expect to be able to do things offline, and really, for our Fusion play, meeting them where they're at, so that they can bring all of that goodness, especially things like offline.
Okay, so as a technical architect for the language, do you think we will ever see functions rather than some weird button workaround, or some better way of grouping your lots of code? Because right now, what people do by default is a one giant function that has 1,000 lines in it, and being able to reuse it. I know they're looking at using some things, but I just never really felt like it.
Greg has some really good blogs on this. and he has been a huge champion in this effort as well. So there are some things you can do today with components and get some, but definitely we have to have better reusability, and we have to do it. It's there's sort of a mad race to get there. So it's kind of tricky. Like, we've got 50 things that we're sprinting at, and we got to do them all, and we'll just see when we can land them all. And this is part of where, when we have these sort of calls and things, and the interesting question is always, if we ask someone, do you want this? The answer is always yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
The interesting question is, what's the priority?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if we ask someone, okay, which do you want more for the Git integration in the studio to go GA, or for the reusable functions in Canvas, things like that, and then asking large pools. So that's tricky, but definitely we have to have that sort of reusability for sure.
I've always enjoyed Matt Barber's time at some summits. He's like, all right, I'm going to give you guys 100 fake dollars. Here's everything we could do. How would you spend your money? And I always thought that was a great way it was a fun way. I mean, it's a lot better than a survey of what you're 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10. It was a lot better than that. Oh yeah. If I was doing this, oh man. And you kind of get to put yourself in his shoes for a little bit, in your shoes as a technical architect and that set of things. So yeah, trying to prioritize that stuff is really hard, especially when you're like, well, this isn't that big of a deal, but we can get it done in a week, or this is amazing. We didn't know, but it's going to take a year. So yeah, that's
that is the challenge, but definitely 100% agree with the direction. Like, certainly there are things people have tossed out where we sort of look at it and say, like, yeah, that's not really the direction we want to be heading in. So yeah, this 100% agree. It's just how fast can we get there?
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Is there something specifically that you would like people to help, give feedback on and focus areas when they're looking at this functionality? And how can they get in touch with you to sort of share that feedback?
Yeah, and we're talking specifically about the Git integration. Yeah, so the sort of things that we're looking for, and that I would, personally love to know more is, one, is it in the right direction? Like, are we doing something that the idea, like the story behind it, the narrative, does the narrative make sense? Here this has a tie to Git, and that is a challenge for a lot of people. Like, is tying it to Git, we could have done it where we don't expose Git. Like, here, to use it, you have to enter your Git credentials. And so that's a huge pivot. So if there's a large audience that is on Canvas apps that do not have a Git account, right? Because that was the whole point of a low-code platform. Why would I need Git? That sounds like a pro dev thing. So here it is. We've had this feature that is super useful for, hey, I can finally collaborate, but I need a Git account. That is, interesting to figure out. Okay, well, do we need to do something about that? Certainly we're always curious how people are using it. Like, how much of this is really for collaboration versus how much is, I just am thrilled to have an audit and some Git integration behind my app. So getting some signals there, very interesting. Also interesting to know which sort of Git providers. We sort of demo with GitHub. We do work with the Git remote protocol, so we'll work with any Git provider, ADO or Bitbucket or anything else. But interesting to know if really do people just really care about GitHub, or do they need other providers as well? And ultimately, it's just about ensuring that our customers are successful in their end-to-end scenarios. So if there's some part of their end-to-end that we've kind of missed, and that so for some reason this just isn't working for them, that's good feedback to know as well.
So if you ever have anyone that complains about maybe they had a merge that they lost or something like that, I think what you need to do is you need to get them a Windows 95 desktop computer running Word 95 and have them try to write up a 10-page paper and see how many times they lose half their paper, if not more, due to some weird error. And then you can say, "Now we've come a long way. We're not there yet, but you got to admit that we've come a long way as far as losing the changes we've made, losing the history we've made, getting things wrong." And so I think people that don't want to use Git don't know it, but would realize that this is like getting into modern day online web a Word application versus the Windows 95 application. Oh, okay. Well, I'll figure this out if I get these benefits with it. So yeah.
I don't even know what Word does these days in the co-authoring if someone does a maniacal edit in Word. I feel like I need to go and find this out now and go and do a maniacal edit of a Word document.
But basically, every now and then you'll get sort of a dialogue that pops up that just sort of says, "Sorry, these can't be merged." But it's elusive. I spotted it in PowerPoint one day, and I took a screenshot and sent it to the team. PowerPoint is perfect.
So if people see these elusive dialogues, they should send them your way as well, right? Spotted in the wild.
Along with their session token.
They're not as rare yet, but I mean, the important thing to us is that we had a solid foundation. Like, we know that this is still experimental, so we know it's not done. And but what we wanted to make sure was that there was a clear path to get to where we needed to go, and that we were built on the right foundation and we had the right principles. So we do think Git is a very solid foundation for anything about collaboration, merges and audits and history, and that even if something weird happens, sort of the examples Daryl talked about, like what we would tell people is, well, go take a look at Git, and that is a huge improvement over, say, Word 95, because before there was nothing backing it, and now you are backed by Git, and you do have a chance to go fix it. And kind of the way we'd see that play out is you might have a team of 30 people and 30 makers, and sort of the weird, wacky thing happens, once a week, and then, okay, you sort of have the pro dev in that 30 teams as sort of the person that gets tapped to go dig through Git and fix it. So certainly we don't want everybody on the team to have to be dealing with complex source control concepts, but at least if it's possible for the one expert there to go fix it, that's a huge improvement.
Does this also mean that when right now you see your versions of your applications and you can go download them, but you have no idea what's in it? Does that mean that you're also linking that to, hey, this is the version in Git, here's the version of Git, you can do a diff between, are you doing diffs between these versions just right there in the browser and experience?
Right. So we don't have it built into the browser yet, but yeah, the ability to do that, like, we have that information. So before, right, in a Canvas app today, you'll see the list of published versions. But there's no real visibility into it. You can't really tell the difference between version 4 and version 5. And, with Git, we can. So we can see, oh, they added these screens and they changed this formula and who's the people that touched it. And even it's more than just linear, right? Like, you might have branches, you might have rollbacks. Like before, let's say Daryl did go mess up a formula and broke a few other things while he was at it. With Git, like before, you might have to roll back and say, well, he broke it on Tuesday. Man, we got to go back to Monday and sort of rebuild. Whereas with Git, you could say, well, this was the change Daryl made, and this is what he touched, and we're just going to remove that one change. And it gives you more control. You don't just have to bulk roll back to Monday. You can remove just that specific change on Tuesday and keep Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday's work. So, features like that. And right now, that's all on the Git side. And so, depending on where this goes, we may expose more UI to do that sort of thing straight from the Studio interface and make it more approachable to the maker. But the critical thing is all the heavy lifting is backed by something industrial like Git.
The other advantage, as well as the versioning between, somebody making an edit, and I think, to me, this has been an absolute lifesaver on so many occasions, is with each release you're making to production or into test, being able to see the differences that someone has made between the last time someone released to production. Because previously, okay, with model-driven apps, you had you had that ability to do because you'd use solution pack, unpack, and you'd have the XML files. But with the Canvas apps, it would, like you say, it would just be this blob. And you just say, well, we've got a new version of a Canvas app. We hope it works. But now with this, you can actually see exactly what the diff is between version 1 and version 2 being moved into production. And that's huge because it gives people confidence, and it gives people a sense of, okay, I understand what's being released because of this is the reasons behind that.
Exactly. And even with the XML today, that's not a magical solution. Like, it still has a lot of the same problems that it's XML, but it's not canonical. It might get reordered. It might, merging anything that looks like HTML and XML that is basically a representation of HTML could be very difficult to merge. Like, one little change and the whole file is different, and lots of indenting and things like that. So there are definitely, challenges there. We'd love to apply the lessons we learned from Canvas and use that on the rest of the platform and elsewhere if we can.
Yeah. Very cool.
Oh, very, very cool. Mike, are we missing anything? Is there something that you want to, some cool thing that you've put out there that people aren't using or aren't looking at yet or aren't aware of yet, or aren't maybe aware of how to get access to the collaboration, the extremely experimental stuff here? How do we get people to use this stuff?
Yeah. So there are some pointers and some documentation. I'll go send them your way. And yeah, just linking to the docs, and they can go kick the tires and try it out. And we love any feedback that they have.
Awesome. Scott, you got any other questions?
No. I'm so excited. And what I really love about this is that it's both an investment that's equally beneficial, both from the kind of the pro dev and the low code side of app maker side of things. That's what's great about this, is it really does bring the two sides together in a collaborative way. And I think I hope, continued improvements in that area is going to be the future of the Power Platform.
Yeah. Totally. Cool. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And we had some technical difficulties that we our listeners won't have to worry about, so that's great. And then and you had this crazy idea that you're going to say something that was boring. None of it was boring. It was all very, very interesting.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
It's so lucky to have you, Mike.
I know you don't really have a Twitter account here, we're hearing, but you do have a LinkedIn, and you're there at Mike Stahl. Any other places that people would reach out to you or that you'd like to share? Anything else like the point to?
Yeah. What we do are having more and more open source projects. So folks are always welcome to, and I'll send you the repos for that. They're always welcome to stop by there, file an issue, fix a bug, have discussions. So some great stuff's there, and I'm always happy to chat and learn more what people are doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Well, Scott, that's how our listeners can get a hold of Mike and to find out more information, and we'll share whatever links he sends us. How can they sends us? Very close to sense, but send. Anywho, Scott, how can our listeners get a hold of us?
Yeah, you can get hold of us at cast@xrmtoolbox.com or LinkedIn and Twitter @xrmtoolcast. And we'd love to hear from you. Any suggestions for future topics as well. And we'd just please get in touch.
And if people don't like the new outro that we recorded, then let me know. Who knows? Maybe we'll make it even sillier or funner. Maybe we won't have an outro. I don't know. Scott's been covering for Jonas since almost a year now, and it's been Daryl and Jonas on the podcast and the outro. And I finally went through the new year. And it's like, all right, I need to put Scott's name on here. I need to put Lynn's name on here because he saves me so much time editing. And so anyway, that's Mike. Again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And we'll look forward to whatever the next steps are. And we'll look forward to the extremely experimental becoming slightly experimental and then not experimental, hopefully. So,
thanks, guys. That's been great.
Thanks, right, Mike.
Thanks.
Speak soon.
This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl and Scott Durrell. Produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com, tweet @xrmtoolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XRM Toolcast page.